Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on your time zone. Thank you so much for joining us, the Choice Solutions webinar. We're excited to get started. So it's 11 o'clock Central on the hour, or on the dot. So I want to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and introduce and hand things over to Dana Steinlogge with Choice Solutions.
Hey, thanks, Ellie. So yeah, Dana Steinlogge with Choice Solutions. On behalf of our team, thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. What Shane and Oz and team have put together is awesome content insights that I think will bring a ton of value to your organizations as you're thinking about modernizing the workspace and especially with all the DaaS options that are starting to pop up. So I'm one of the partners and co-lead up the sales organization. Again, thanks for joining us. For those of you who aren't too familiar with us, I'm just going to share real briefly on our team, our company, and then we'll dive right into the great stuff that you guys all made time for. So we've got folks here that are joining us from all over the country, and there might even be some from overseas. And again, we're thankful for your time and making the opportunity, making time to join us across all verticals, whether it be healthcare, financial, insurance, universities, manufacturing, whatnot. So, and that's what our team, we've got presence mainly in the central part of the US, as well as in the Southeast as well. But we've just through reputation, referrals, different opportunities, we've earned the opportunity to work across a number of states throughout the country, and we're grateful for that. So, the main thing, what's the main thing? Like your organizations, you're taking time to join us today. You've either made strategic investments into end user computing solutions and technologies, or you're exploring that as you look to modernize your workspace. And so with that, what the main thing is, you're looking to improve the technology experience of your users. You want to provide a high definition, secure access to the apps, services, data that they need to do their work most productively. But as an organization, you also have to have that, make sure you have the proper security and control, right? And you're looking to leverage these technology investments as a way to attract as well as retain today's top talent. So all the while, though, you've got this cloud transformation that's taken place, this migration from the legacy to the hybrid cloud. So what right mix of transition that you're in right now in adoption of SaaS applications, of adoption of the public cloud, the private cloud and technologies associated with that. And so with that produces maybe challenges or questions or opportunity, things that you're looking to explore and understand further, maybe traditional EUC approaches that might have been VDI on-prem or app virtualization on-prem. And now there's this emergence of desktop as a service offerings and a multitude of options that are emerging. But also too, there's this transition that's taken place within how things are secured. And so authentication, and how do you do that the best way, again, from a user experience perspective. And then you have this mix of applications as well. So you might have legacy applications you're still working to address as you go to a modernized workspace environment. So those are kind of things, especially today, but things that we as a company, we're here to be a partner and help you with. Our goal, we want to help you adopt a simpler, more secure IT environment. That's from the data center and the cloud services you might be consuming, all the way down to the secure endpoint. That's our goal. And how we do that, we can help with, whether it be projects or solutions. We can assist with the technology acquisition. So the technology components, the pieces, the software companies, you might have a part of that solution, but even more valuable is the services that we can present and help with. So on the professional services side, we've got advisory services. So kind of sitting down in workshops, and the guys will talk about this more, sitting down on the front end and helping with workshops to help you kind of map out and talk through your environment and kind of put together what that future state modern workspace environment might look like. That meets your guys' needs. But we also can assist with architecture, deployment, professional services, as well as coming in periodically with health assessments or jump starts to kind of unlock new technologies. And for organizations that might have constrained IT staffs and challenges with keeping up the day-to-day upkeep, we've got an awesome managed IT services team that can come in and help you out as well. So technology partnerships we have, and a lot of our end user computing solutions, these are companies we work with. With each of them, just know we've got advanced top tier expertise, some of them very elite and nationally and internationally recognized in their capabilities. But as a partner, we've got, just strategic partnerships and ways, and aligning and partnering with each of these different companies when you might be considering them as a part of an overall modernized end user computing environment. And so today there's going to be some new stuff that Shane and Oz are going to talk through and go through as well that we're really pumped about. So that's a little bit just about our team, our approach. I do want to say one thing I do want to share real quick is we will have a survey at the end. It'll pop up when the session ends, but would be very, very grateful if you would take just a moment or two to provide us feedback. Put a lot into kind of developing these events and the content, the demonstrations, and feeling that they're bringing value to you. But we certainly need that feedback. So thank you in advance for taking a moment to fill that out when we get done. And also to the Q&A, any questions as Shane and Oz are going through things, please make sure to put them in the chat window and we'll address them as best we can. So with that, I want to turn it over to our end user computing practice leads, Scott Osborne, Shane Kleiner. Guys, thank you so much. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
So yeah, we're excited today. I'm so excited. I switched from my t-shirt to a polo. So it's a big day.
It's a big day when Oz put some pants and a polo on.
Well, I got shorts.
Get
on.
ready.
You probably saw
That's
that
right.
when I snuck in there. So I'm on behalf of the Shane and Oz show on here. We're doing our last webinar here for 2022. We've done a few this year, so this is the last one to wrap up for the holidays. I'm a Citrix CTP and NVIDIA advisor on that side. I'm also an NTC for Nutanix, and I lead both user groups here in the Omaha Metro, where I hail from. So any of you Omaha peeps on here, you're probably pretty familiar with hanging out with me, having a few drinks, doing our thing, right? So that's a little bit about me. Senior solutions architect. I've been with Choice now 11, 12 years, something like that. Start to lose track. I co-lead the EUC practice with Shane here. So Shane has some good logos on his side as always.
That's right. Yeah, I got
this recently, by the way. You haven't added like Disney or guess you don't.
No, I kind of kept it, Netflix is kind of going down a little bit. So I added Apple TV in there. And then most importantly, as far as the certifications, if you click that space bar, look what pops in. Go ahead, hit that space bar right there.
What pops in there, bud?
NFL.
Oh,
that's right. Step back. That's right, folks out there. You probably don't know, but I'm not a sports fan, but I recently started watching football. Just learned Dolphins did pretty good, that QB. But so I just started watching sports. So my certifications might even dwindle down less. I don't know.
You're a more well-rounded individual.
That's right. I'm working on it, man. I'm working on it. So excited to be here. We're pretty pumped about what we're offering up today. As being kind of EUC leads, we have to kind of take a look at at kind of the strategic direction that we take going forward and kind of be always up to date on the emerging technologies. So senior solutions architect here for Choice, co-lead with practice with Oz, Citrix CTP, Azure solutions architect, and then certified in a bunch of streaming platforms.
We'll be going through things pretty quick today. We've only got an hour today, not our normal 2 to 3 hours, whatever it is, that we get. So we're limited to an hour today. So we're going to be going through, fairly good speed. We're going to kick it off with the QR code, of course, but as we try to keep things fun as we go. So that's part of the reason you guys probably attend, because we're fun.
At least we think that. We can't see the laugh, so we're probably not getting
that for sure. But
nice.
And we do some live demos, which it is what it is. We'll see how they go, but we always take our chances, right? So get out your QR scanners, because we'd like to do a poll like usual. We got just one quick question with that we need you to answer.
Yeah, three questions. Yeah.
Oh, 3 questions.
Yeah. I threw in 2 extra. They're quick though, super quick. Just scan them and rock and roll.
If I was leaving it up to Shane on some of these, we might have like 10 questions on this, right?
That's right. So hit the next button. So let's give them a second to scan the QR code. We heard some feedback that we didn't leave enough time. So we want to make sure everyone scans the code.
Exactly right. We got to give enough 15, 20 seconds.
I think it's good now.
All right, here we go. 5, 4. There we go. All right. We'll get some live results. Gives us an idea. We know our customer base. We're going to be heavy on the Citrix virtual apps and desktops and DaaS side of things. I apologize for those of you that are on-prem with the Citrix virtual apps and desktops. That's the current name, and it's going to stay that way for the on-prem folks. So DaaS would be if you got some cloud licensing, of course, from the Citrix side of things.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting to see some folks we knew kind of Citrix, like you said, would be higher up, but it's interesting to see some folks. I wonder what other is. Maybe some AWS out there, maybe some just good old physical, you know?
Yeah, we thought about putting more on here, but yeah, we just threw another column there, but all right, so it seems like it's good. All right. And then Shane, I'm gonna hand over.
Oh, wait, go back. We have one more question. Quick.
Oh, we got one more question?
Yeah,
oh, no.
Go back. That's right. All right. Is modern authentication used in your EUC environment? And we'll talk a little bit more about modern authentication. If you're using any of these, IDPs or modern auth in the environment, go ahead and vote real quick. At least from what we've seen, that this is something that's been much more prevalent in the enterprise, especially over the last 2 years. A lot of folks have been using it, from an identity perspective for SaaS apps and things like that, kind of unifying their identity, but not using it in front of their EUC environments. But we've been seeing a huge uptick in that. So this is interesting. Yeah, let's kind of figure what I'd start seeing uptick there.
Does align with our customer base and a lot of heavy on the Microsoft side, so makes sense.
Yep. And the last one is, are you using any kind of application layering, virtualization, isolation type solutions in your EUC environment?
I like the 2 additional questions, Shane. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't. I threw those in. I didn't want you to know.
That was a surprise to me. It was a surprise.
That's right.
Did add additional couple minutes though to our question section here.
Nikki did text me. Yes, my brother-in-law. He asked, "How do you scan the QR code if you're watching from your phone?" That's a good one. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know.
You're going to need a second phone.
If you're watching this from your phone, it's pretty small.
You must be in the restroom. So it's a lot of traditional app installs. We see, and so nothing with Turbo or New Messent. So we'll talk a little bit about today some Citrix app layering. Cool. That's good to see the lay of the land. That definitely helps us through context. The rest of the presentation. So let's rock and roll.
And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure I can give you control on your Shane.
Yep.
Should have it in a second.
Awesome. Yeah. So basically kind of the premise of what is good enough, right? And when we think about this, if you look at the history of Microsoft, I mean, they've really over the last 4 or 5 years, they've done just incredible work. I mean, the Office 365, the whole M365 suite is top notch. Intune is market leader. I mean, look what they, I love Citrix, but look, they pretty much pushed them out, right? I mean, Intune is just rock solid. And then the Azure Virtual Desktop platform, and where you're looking at, where they're going with Microsoft 365, Windows PC or Cloud PC and things like that. And they're doing an incredible job. And Azure Virtual Desktop is really starting to get to a point where the greatest competition for Citrix isn't, Horizon or AWS, right? It's really, good enough. Right. And Azure Virtual Desktop today, in some cases, in some use cases, is good enough. And we're seeing over the last 2 years, a lot of our enterprises are starting to pick off some use cases, low hanging fruit and things like that, and starting to get Azure Virtual Desktop into the environment. And once that is done, it starts to create this kind of disparate user experience where you now have 2 separate portals you're accessing your environment with, 2 separate areas to control policies and profiles and things like that. So that's kind of what we wanted to talk about and kind of set the stage for, there's a challenge out there, and we're seeing this across the enterprise as we go from, hybrid. We get more into a hybrid world where we're dealing more, not just one cloud, but also multi-cloud type situations for delivery, various different contexts that are out there and whatnot. And really the biggest battle is good enough. And we're going to be talking today about how to really streamline that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and with that, with what we're talking to today, we usually show this slide in a lot of our webinars. Just EUC in general is complex with a ton of different things that you have to think about with end user compute, as we know. Most of you will know on the webinar today. There's so many different facets of it. I mean, you can't possibly touch on all of them in one webinar ever. It would be like a full 8-hour day. But we've touched on a lot of these in various previous webinars, right? So we did a licensing one earlier this year, for example. We've done a multi-cloud one with Nutanix clusters. We focused on some endpoints and some some other auto scale in one of those. So the point being is that today we're really focusing on this modern workspace. and some of the cool new facets of up and coming technologies that we're working with, and how they can help. And the points in green here are really items that are part of the UC landscape that we will be touching on today. So we got image management, application delivery, obviously DaaS. We got some little bit of monitoring, alerting just on the back end with what we're doing there. But SSO, obviously the Azure side of things, and what Shane's going to be showing. All these are playing into what we're showing today. But previously.
Awesome. Yeah. So this is a slide we put in because, we do a lot of these webinars, and also there's a lot of great webinars that other folks and on a team in Choice do, as well as like customer interviews and things like that. So if you're on YouTube, definitely check us out. You can go ahead and subscribe here. And Oz gave me this slide versus the other one because I tend to take a lot longer talking about the other stuff. I figured this would probably be a good time to talk about, methodologies about subscribing to YouTube. And put my wait a second. Nice. All right, he cut me off. So it's interesting. So we talked about kind of workspace components, and we talked about all the different kind of disparate parts. We talked about the challenges there are when we start bringing kind of these disparate pieces of the workspace together. And we're kind of thinking, just made a joke here about this, really about MySpace really had it right back in the day, is really creating this kind of customized, personalized space, right? And that's something that that really we call it MySpace 2.0 as a joke here, but really it's about being a workspace that's built for the hybrid world. And these are the things that kind of make up that kind of hybrid world and that hybrid workspace. And you're going to kind of see this theme trickle out through the rest of the presentation. So from a DaaS perspective, we're talking today about Citrix and Azure Virtual Desktop. There are other competitors out there like Horizon and AWS and Frame, but we're going to be focusing on Citrix and AVD. Those are kind of our two that we really hone in on. And then from the workspace component perspective, it's really about these couple things, right? So the ability to have some sort of workspace aggregator, right? The ability to so you don't have to log into Citrix Storefront or Workspace, and you have to log into the AVD client or the web client over here, and two different platforms that you're managing, right? A way to bring that together, but more importantly, bring it together in a kind of way where you have kind of situational and contextual awareness is absolutely key in this hybrid world. The ability to have portability with your applications, right? So if you're going to deliver applications to both Citrix and AVD, that's whether it's on-prem in multiple Azure regions, or you're in Citrix, that's also in AWS, you want to have some ability to have portability with those applications. We're going to talk about that today. Dynamic workspace management, using something like Citrix Workspace Environment Management. That's kind of a UEM solution that makes your workspace dynamic and can be managed the same way across AVD and Citrix. Holistic monitoring, in our case there is being able to monitor not just the EUC environment, but the actual endpoints all the way to the EUC environment, right? That's very important. And hybrid storage, we're seeing a lot more customers work with OneDrive for user data. That's been coming up. We do a lot of these workshops and we see all these trends as throughout the year. And there's been a lot of customers moving to OneDrive for end user data. So really having to deal with hybrid storage environments, and how do you deal with that? And the last thing is personalization. Well, not the last thing, but personalization. How do you handle your profiles and across these disparate environments? And then the last thing is identity, which we'll be kind of diving into as kind of a deeper point here very shortly.
Yep. And you'll notice hybrid is going to come up many times because, for those of you that were able to, really focus on one technology or not have a hybrid situation, that's great. But man, it's, today a lot of our, focus is going to be hybrid this, hybrid that, even hybrid DaaS here that we're showing off today, where you got two different disparate solutions and you got to put them together. The big highlights with that, of course, as Shane mentioned, is Citrix and AVD. Liquid Yubico is going to come into play here with the YubiKeys on the passwordless side that Shane is going through, and of course Turbo for the containerization, the pieces that I'll be talking through. So those are the big ones, but really all the ingredients that make up this presentation and what we're doing for our demo. We like to show this as there's a lot that goes into it, but you can see the list here. We got Turbo, Liquid, Yubico, Nerdio Enterprise that we're using too. We've had a presentation on that before with AVD and what we're using that for. Citrix on that side, we got the latest bits where we can, like WEM, profile management, 2203 cumulative update 1 on the VDA, fast current release 2206. All the nice cloud bits for Citrix, Microsoft Azure, AVD. We got the P2 entitlement on the Azure AD. That gives you some of that advanced conditional access and some of the things that Shane's really been diving in deep and doing for quite some time here. We have a site-to-site between our Overland Park, Kansas lab here and Azure East. On the Nutanix side, everything's hosted 524/6. You can see the builds here, but it's AHV, it's files. I got some files analytics in there. NVIDIA, not part of this presentation, again, previous ones, but it's backed by an A16 RTX, virtual workspace station licensing. Those of you familiar with that, the vGPU 13.3, the driver package, Win 10 Enterprise 21H2. By the way, Win 11 22H2 is rolling out GA now as of yesterday. So all of you check your Windows updates. You're going to be having that. That'll be the next thing. Honorable mentions, control up on the back end for that holistic monitoring he was mentioning. We're using BizF like we do in all of our stuff, and then remote display analyzer on that side. So, that really makes the ingredients. So, Shane will get into here on some of the cool bits on the modern off.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Oz. Hopefully you all got to see some of a little bit behind the scenes there in the demo kind of lab environment there. That was pretty neat. So really we're going to spend some time talking about a short amount of time here, talking about kind of, why modern off, why look at that from an identity perspective. So really it's about a couple of things here. The main thing is really around the perimeter. The perimeter is continuously expanding, which you hear from pretty much every vendor that's out there, partner or whatever. It's 100% true. It's not just some marketing BS that someone's spewing at you. It's that the perimeter is expanding. It's not just inside your data center. It's really the perimeter follows the user, right? And the user is expanding, and I would say it jumped tenfold over the last couple of years with what's obviously the global pandemic, right? So you need not just to extend the perimeter, but you have to basically provide intelligent contextual protections across all form factors, right? And that's really basically that's really what these modern identity platforms provide, right? So centralized identity source, but also bring in that contextual awareness, and then give you the ability to start doing things like crowdsourced identity protections. Like if you're talking Azure AD, P2, things like identity protection, specifically around like risk management, automatically looking at known bad passwords, checking against password spray attacks, for instance, or push spamming, or things like, for instance, I forgot the name off the top of my head, but basically, essentially, when you're traveling between two different locations, right? We got that warning last night, logging in from Kansas and from Florida with the same account, it flags it as a risky user, right? So having that kind of geo conditional access awareness is extremely important. From a password auth perspective, it really is enabling the ability for passwordless auth, right? So being able the ability to not have, and we'll talk about that in the next slide, but not have to worry about passwords when you log into your environment. That's a big deal. Modern identity protocols is really, when we say modern auth, it's enabling more than just your Active Directory password, right? Being able to use things like SAML, OAuth, OpenID Connect, token from an authentication perspective, TOTP, things like that. And that's really where you start to have kind of a single sign-on identity across all your SaaS applications. A lot of companies use Okta or Azure AD. And they've been doing that for years, but now it's like bringing that into the Citrix environment or the AVD environment. That's where we're starting to see that happen now. Multi-factor is extremely, that's pretty much, you need it, right? You should not have any environment without any kind of multi-factor. And in fact, all the insurance companies from a cyber perspective are requiring it. And the other big thing around kind of modern identity is it enables a lot of business opportunities around, like, for instance, streamlining mergers and acquisitions, right? Instead of having to collapse a bunch of local, Active Directory domains, right? You can basically have a central identity platform and sync those identities up, up into that central identity platform, and then use that to basically transform and log into your DaaS environment, which is pretty awesome. Single sign-on, of course, and user provisioning, and that's really more on the identity side, but being able to provision those users and provide single sign-on capabilities. And the last one, which we've been seeing more and more of, is bring your own identity. So telling customers, if you're in a service provider scenario or just customers in general, maybe you have vendors that you want them to use their Azure AD tenant or their Okta or their Google identity platform to log into your DaaS environment. You can totally enable that. with Citrix Workspace with the ADCs as well. So enabling those B2B scenarios. And then finally, just want to make mention here on the modern auth piece is, FIDO2 support is supported from the VDA 2009 plus or 2009 plus. And it provides native FIDO2 token support, and that with its own custom virtual channel, which you'll see kind of a demo of that today, which really enables a streamlined experience there. And then 22H2 Insider Preview, 22H2, actually last night, we just got an alert on that. So that their AVD does support SSO plus FIDO2 support. It just kind of is in tech preview still, but it's baked into Windows 11 only, where on the FIDO side for CVAD or DaaS is Windows 10 plus. So yep, go ahead in the next slide there. Yeah, just why I pass this off. We'll talk through this relatively quickly because we want to get into the meat of it. But really, if you look at bad, good, better, right? It's kind of directly from Microsoft, right? It's really about improving the user experience, right? Being able to just plug a token into the a FIDO key into the computer, or use your phone from an authenticator perspective with authenticator and phone sign-in, or Windows Hello built into your laptop, and being able to log directly into your desktops without having to use your passwords, right? Reducing social engineering, brute forcing, or overall just reducing the attack surface, right? Your weakest link is your users. I mean, everyone knows that. Hopefully there's no end users that randomly join the call. I'm sorry, you're good people, but you tend to let your passwords get loose on the monitor. And probably, I don't know, 70% of the people on the call right now probably have their birthday or their pet's name in some way, shape, or form in their password, right? Maybe not 70%. We got a lot of good IT folks on, so maybe it's like 20%. The non-IT folks that joined, all the sales folks on the call. I don't know. But point being is, you just need to make sure that, we have passwordless auth enabled in the enterprise. And the last thing I just mentioned that we didn't talk about there, which we could talk about through the presentation here, is that we need to have federated authentication services on the DaaS side to enable complete single sign-on into the environment.
Yep. So thanks for advancing the slide there, Shane. Appreciate it.
I didn't. Did I do that, or you did that?
You did it. No, my hands are.
I thought you did that because I was talking. Well, let's go back then. No, just go ahead. It's fine. But I just the thing I didn't mention there. I thought you did that. I must have hit it with my hand went down. But the other piece just to mention here is the single sign or self-service capabilities is a big piece in the modern auth, as well as the fast piece, which is important. That's a Citrix specific component, because modern authentication typically is like SAML based, right, or OpenID based, and essentially there's no Windows built-in native Windows credential provider. So you need something like federated authentication services from Citrix that mints a smart card on the fly for single sign-on login.
No, you did it again. You mean to pass it off? You ready?
Yep, go ahead. That was for you.
Yes. So why DaaS, right? So Citrix AVD are our focus today, but just real quick, DaaS meaning, again, the cloud solution side of things, rather than just fully on-prem. It's just about being flexible, right? That's the key to almost every enterprise today. Again, hybrid situation, being flexible, being able to burst and do stuff in public cloud as well as on-prem. Perpetual licensing, as we know it, is an endangered species. Everything's going subscription licensing, even for Citrix, for example. Anything new, and the on-prem licensing is not perpetual anymore. So it is going the way of the dodo and the dinosaurs and everything like that with the perpetual licensing. Cloud first message. If you haven't heard it, I'm sure you will. It's louder and louder everywhere we go. Every manager that goes to any conference is coming back and wanting, focus on quote unquote cloud first. You can't really go cloud only, but you can start looking there, right? And most everybody is at this point. I'm sure you guys are. That includes, platform as a service, desktop as a service, big focus today. Infrastructure as a service, all the as a service stuff, right? Less management of the infrastructure, more focus on the image and the user experience. Obviously, that's huge. That's key. Those images and the overall user experience within session, getting logged in, all of that stuff should be the focus, and that this allows you to do that more easily, because you don't have some of the other components to worry about anymore. Features and functionality, warp speed, cloud, everything's there first, right? It's greenfield. There's no build associated with, it's just constantly kept up to date. So I mean, that's huge, right? There's some stuff that doesn't trickle down to on-prem. So the DaaS solutions here, you're going to get stuff. I mean, obviously AVD is a complete DaaS solution. There's no on-prem piece to that from Microsoft's perspective, except for like using Azure Stack or whatever to host resources if you're doing some mix like that. But all the cloud components, you have no choice, right? It's all DaaS. Azure is obviously the key to both solutions. Citrix, I mentioned here, has multiple dance partners there, as we all know, Google, AWS, it can play anywhere. But for most of our customer base, as we saw in the slide earlier with the questionnaire, Azure is a big part of that. So, you're already doing a lot there already. Entitlements of what you already use. Citrix DaaS just had a repackaging. They added some, WEMs across the board, session recordings across the board. They added in some of the higher ones, analytics, those kind of things. And then, of course, Microsoft with their M365 entitlement, always adding stuff to make it more sticky, right? More sticky for Azure. Anything they can do to get you up there, they're going to do. And they have been doing it pretty well from that strategic standpoint. To where everybody's looking at something, what they can do with this AVD thing, right? Future work, hybrid office, musical chairs, people bouncing around, right? It's hard to retrain on old legacy that's sitting on-prem. DaaS, of course, eliminates a lot of those things. So if you do have the musical chairs going on in your organization, it's easier to get somebody in that chair and, onboarded for the technology that they need to manage. Win 10, 11, multi-session, game changer. If you haven't heard about that, I'm not going to go in deep on what it is, but essentially it's an Azure-only offering from Microsoft. Total game changer as far as, ability to use your old server OS type capability of RDSH on a Windows 10 or Windows 11 client. That's only for these DaaS solutions to be available there. And then just patching, keeping up with the bad guys, it's getting harder. This makes it a little easier, less things you got to patch and keep up to date. And then for us, a lot of it's a mix, right? So like Citrix, a lot of it, ADC storefront are still, there's a fair amount of environments where those are still on-prem, but all the other stuff is offloaded. So good mix of stuff, just some architecture, just quick architecture, as you can see here, very simplistic. From a Citrix DaaS standpoint, they got workspace and gateway service. These are the components that are a lot of times maybe not being used in the mix, but if you're all in, you're getting all this. You have the various services, from a cloud standpoint, then really it just boils down to cloud connectors, that replace your controllers and all that other stuff. If you're a CVAD customer, about all the other stuff that I'm referring to. You limit the damage as far as in the footprint, as far as what you got to keep patched and updated and whatnot, and this could be Azure Virtual Desktop up there. It could be your on-prem on Nutanix or whatever you're hosting on-prem. It could be AWS. It doesn't really matter. For AVD, from this standpoint, this comes from one of Shane and I, Jumpstart that we do for AVD native. Very similar, right? You got this one, we got the Windows Virtual Desktop, which is what AVD was, but we haven't rebranded that here. But you got your web access gateway broker, all that stuff, right? All that's, you have no choice about that. All that's part of the AVD cloud control plane. And then you got everything else around that, your resource groups, VNets and all that up in Azure, as far as the architecture goes. But point being is that all this stuff is nothing you have to worry about. It's really just all about the, the endpoints, the Azure, the VDA agent side of things. Similar to Citrix Cloud as far as that goes. First I'm going to touch on a little bit about the what and why about containers. So similar to how he just went through in the password list, the containers, if you haven't heard, you might be familiar a little bit with containers from a DevOps standpoint, and that's sort of the thought process of where Turbo came from. Being able to virtualize, this is all application virtualization, being able to virtualize this into their own containers, as Turbo calls them, rather than traditional, right? So there's so many choices to sift through from the application delivery and image management side. It's constantly evolving. That's why we're here today. That's why we're, getting into some of the new technologies that fit the bill better for our environments that we're helping our customers with. You have traditional, you got layering, you got masking. Here you got containers, or effectively streaming. If you're familiar with like AppV, ThinApp, those are some of the old school ones that are on their last legs. Those are essentially in maintenance mode at this point. There's really no features or anything. Like FinApp is, I think, end of availability. AppV is like just kind of stagnant right now because it's going to be put to bed. Those are the old school ones. I was even a formal Citrix Streaming guy. So for any old school admins on the call today, if you're back from the XenApp 665 days, I did a ton, great product with Citrix Streaming. It was another application delivery mechanism similar to this with streaming technology. It didn't have near the feature set and the container side of things, but it did do like an AppV that Citrix had as part of their suite. Traditional, of course, is like SCCM or just installing it in the image. What most are familiar with today, you know, that's what we're trying to really think outside the box and get away from that old thinking, modernize the approach to the OS, keeping the gold image as clean as possible, application, you know, packaging and those kind of things, having a dedicated team doing their thing, but not having those installs on the images, right? Layering is more about a VHD approach where you layer in different levels. Even within the Turbo world, they call it, you know, it's referred to as layering, even though it's not layering. It's referred to layering when you have multiple containers that are able to talk to in an isolated world. So layering, even the terminology can get confusing there. Masking is where, if you're familiar with FS Logics, that's all they do there. You know, and then basically this is the next generation evolution of the space. This kind of shows that you can then push Turbo out, publish once, publish anywhere to all these different points. Turbo can do them all, right? So it's extreme flexibility delivery. They even have their own remote app delivery capability and huge, powerful, expanding feature set. The legacy application support, you know, that's a big one. Windows 7 to Windows 11, they have an SLA for future-proof guarantee. They'll guarantee that sucker will be future-proof for anything coming up. They even have network isolation within these containers where you can, you know, prevent it from like an IE8, containerize it, make it only go one spot, right? You don't want IE8 trying to talk to the, you know, the interwebs. So, and then, you know, again, physical, virtual, persistent, non-persistent worlds would cover them all from that standpoint. And then just the infrastructure, these are the three big components. We got a hub, we got a portal, we got a SQL. That's what it really boils down to. This is more of the application server. We're not focusing on that at all today. But these are the components to make it all tick from a Turbo standpoint. And then Shane's going to talk a little bit about the liquid side and what we're doing with the aggregation here before we get into some of the demo bits.
Yep. So Liquid really provides kind of a unique solution, and that's why we're excited about continuing to work with them here. Is really about, you know, this kind of answers the question that we had in the beginning. It's kind of starting to bring it all together. Is, you know, how do we handle that user experience challenge when it's just good enough, right? And you're bringing in AVD and Citrix, or even local apps, right? So what Liquid's able to do is really it's an aggregation, you know, an automation and orchestration platform, and really focused around kind of user experience, right? So what it's able to do is be able to have a single portal for local apps, Citrix, DaaS, AVD, and I say plus because they're saying it can also aggregate Horizon, Frame, AWS. We're focusing on specifically on AVD here. You know, hybrid is definitely the way forward, right? Public and private, 100%, as well as hybrid DaaS. We're seeing more and more customers starting to pick off and look at using both solutions. You know, if you don't need the advanced remoting protocol and policy controls and things that Citrix provides, you know, AVD is pretty good. Well, then let's use it with a single common interface, right? But the other piece there is that also helps you to optimize costs. You know, use the best delivery method for the correct situation, right? Versus being able to having to use your, you know, a premium plus license when the user, you know, maybe is just doing more kiosk type functionality or task-based work. Situational awareness with smarter icons is probably the coolest feature. And that's really where basically it will automatically detect, you can create conditional rules and context-based rules based on, you know, user location and 50 plus different rules, which basically will show those icons based on their location, right? If they're in the West Coast, maybe we're going to show them the AVD desktop because that's in the closest region to them, and they won't see the other icons, right? So that's a really neat feature. And I had mentioned, you know, aggregating those applications. The other big piece that I really enjoyed, which I've been asking for years from Citrix and some other folks, really is being able to personalize the portal, right? You can personalize Citrix Workspace and Storefront, but what about you as a personal user? That's really gets back to kind of that MySpace is you can 100% personalize the portal, which is really cool. And it stays constant per each user, which is really neat. So if you want dark mode, you get it. Whatever logo you want, you get it. So it's your own personal space. Built-in UEM capabilities, which we won't touch on today, but essentially it does have built-in UEM capabilities, and as well as software deployment and release management, which is kind of an interesting piece. We're looking at now at helping to create some synergies to potentially create a connector for Turbo and do some delivery of that as well. Release management is really neat, kind of taking you through the whole DTAP stage essentially. So typically we go and create separate dev, prod, UAT environments. We'll create multiple catalogs or rolling catalogs. Built into this, it's all built into the platform and the logic where you can basically create and edit packages and put them into those different staging environments. So really neat solution. And this is what really is the glue that's going to kind of bring it all together. So with that said, let's kind of get into some demos and kind of show you how it all comes together.
Yep. Yeah, so the first one, this is just some of the stuff that Shane's going to be touching on. In a second, we'll switch our screens so that he can get going and show you a little bit about his video that he has. Again, these demos won't be deep dives. They'll just be really quick to piece together what we've just talked about. Again, this was only an hour today. So, but we wanted to reinforce what we just discussed and talked about on why we need these things and show how they're put together. So, Shane, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share.
Yep. Okay, let me go ahead and share the deck. 1 second. It's like a super close up. Does it really look like that? Oh.
You're fine, man. Fine. You've been running. You're looking good, man. You're looking good.
Thank you, man. Thank you. All right. So first thing I want to show is just the just because my phone, the tool that I use doesn't work in the office, and I'd have to go ping them to get it enabled. So I just did a quick video. So what I'm going to be showing here is basically the newer features that they've been there from a passwordless standpoint. If you enable passwordless authentication and mobile sign-in on Microsoft Authenticator, you have number matching and additional context. Now these are enabled as preview features in your actual tenant. So some folks don't know that. So this is kind of a pretty neat. And honestly, I think this really needs to be a requirement. I'm pretty sure Microsoft is going to make this the de facto standard. But this is essentially what it looks like. So on the right, you see my phone. Don't complain about the organization of my phone and all the red dots that are on the phone there. So you go ahead and log in to our demo environment, which we're using Workspace with Azure AD Authentication, logging in as a test user, in this case, test02 to our choicesolutions.dev environment, which is a separate tenant. You'll notice once we go ahead and log in, it's going to go ahead on the phone and prompt me to approve the sign-in. And what you're going to see here is the additional context. It shows me the app that it's coming from. It shows me the location. In this case, the location's a little off, which was mentioned in the tech preview. This might randomly happen. I put in my number match, 41, and I'm logged in and working correctly, signed into the environment. And if I go ahead and click on, I didn't go through and click the desktop because you're going to see us doing single sign-on a few times through this, so it's not a huge win. But the main thing was to look at the single sign-on experience on the phone. This is what it looks like once we come into the environment here. I did want to mention that enabling that capability is something that's done right through the Azure AD tenant. So I can just can show you, it's right here. I was just going to show, I forgot I put that on the slide, so I'll just show you that 1 second here. I'm just going to pull it up and just show you here security. 1 second. Hold on, where is it? Oh, my screen's locking up. 1 second. There we go. So I just share this, swap the screen so you can see it for 2 seconds. Here we go. So basically, and I'll pop it back to Oz here. So basically, once you're in Azure AD and your tenant, obviously you need to be an admin to be able to do this. But under policies, you can see we enable the FIDO2 tokens. And when you go to enable that method, you can say all users or some. In our case, we did all, same for Authenticator. But under Authenticator, you can come in here and click configure, and this is where you'll see the preview features. So I basically said, number matching, application name, which is kind of nice as well for the user, as well as a geographic location. I think number matching is what's so awesome about that is it prevents against the push spamming. You're so used to seeing the spamming pushes, you get muscle memory, right? Now you'll have to match that number. So we did it to a target group, and that's pretty much it. It's very easy to set up and get going. So I'm pretty sure I'll end up being the default there. So I'll pass it back to you, Oz, and we'll look at the passwordless auth demo. We'll actually do. This is basically showing number matching. The passwordless auth I'll do as part of the whole liquid demo at the end there. So you want to jump to your stuff?
Yep. Let me get ready here.
We do have some questions, and I guess this one question you kind of weave into your turbo demo, I think makes sense, and I'll weave the other questions in through the conversation. The question was really about, turbo versus others. I know we've talked about that internally a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I want to get your thoughts when we pull it up. But for us, it's really about, I think for us, it was more so about the flexibility of the tool set, the agnostic capabilities, right? And also from a licensing perspective and flexibility, I think was a big one for us.
Yeah, so I'll just quick touch on that while I'm getting this up. But yeah, so turbo for us is the flexibility, the power of of doing what it does, the value, right? So these are third-party products that cost money. The value for from a licensing standpoint has been really favorable for us on that side as well. And just just the cool wow factor for what it does, and needed something now with everybody, the 715 movements, moving from legacy OSs, it's been a big thing to essentially, we still have this stuff that's still sitting now that they're refocusing on the old stuff on old Windows 7 2008 R2. How do we get it off there? Well, it can do that, right? So that's a hot item right now, just because of some of the end of life announcements that have come and gone, right? So for us, it's been a multitude of different various reasons, but yeah, another one in this world is obviously Nimbus, and the cloud paging side falls into this category as well. We know those guys pretty well. It's just Turbo's been our go-to play there. But these are next generation packaging techniques for the modern workplace. So I just wanted to show real quick native, what it looks like before Shane comes around and does the aggregation, right? So we got, if for those of you that aren't familiar, this is the AVD native interface, right? Remote desktop, Citrix here. I can't show my CWA app just because I have app protection on, so it blanks it all out. It just shows a blank screen for where that's at. So I'm in the web here. But essentially, if you're either going to be familiar with one or the other or both of the native experience of getting into these. And so I'm going to go into these, from start to finish. We're not reconnecting anything. We've got a screaming fast, pretty good. I'm pretty proud of it. We got 12 to 17 second logons for what we're doing here. I'm going to go into each one of our environments individually, just to show that experience, and then it'll really pull it together when Shane, shows the aggregation for the two at the end. So I'm going to do this one first, and then I'll do the AVD one for you. It's starting up on the second screen here. It's going to pop in, and then I'm going to go into the AVD one here in just a second. So yeah, as you're waiting, yeah. So here you'll notice we got WEM in here. We got our cool splash screen. WEM's going to do it. It's going to kick off. We're going to acquire our NVIDIA license. It's also going to kick off some of the turbo bits of the logon script for me there, and pop us into our Win10 21H2 desktop. Just to show you a little bit on that front, what we're looking at down here. We got the graphic the graphic status. I'm running H265 for all the GPU goodness there. Quick show you some of the bits on the machine here, right? Everything that goes into this, of course. I want to show the remote display analyzer for those of you that are familiar with that tool. It'll give an overall look of what we're looking at from a desktop standpoint.
You'll notice the name of the desktop is CL Team 7. I don't know if there's any Amazon Prime or terminal list.
Dan Feller has, had Chuck Norris. We have John Reese.
That's right. James Reese, baby, from Terminal List. I don't know if anyone's watching that series. Jack Carr's 5-part series, man. It's awesome. Been stuck in the books.
Yep.
Finished book 3, but it's on Terminal List on Amazon. So you might see some references through the presentation. Indeed.
So you'll see all the goodness over here with Remote Display Analyzer showing all the sweet, stats for what we got going on for our desktop. Here is all of my turboed in apps, right? So these are, as you can see, I got IE6, 8, 11. I got all of them side by side. It's you can run them all and see like how old school that they're going to look. Pops in IE8. So those ones where you might have one app, Let me get rid of this. You might have one app that you need, IE8 for, or, God forbid, nobody's doing IE6, but I just threw it in because it was kind of cool. IE6 and the old school look of that. All of these are containerized apps that aren't on my operating system, which is part of the reason it can be so fast. Everything's clean. With the new 22.9 bits, they even got Office to where we can do Office, but this time, before the latest build that I just put on here, Office was part of the OS, and that's it. Everything else is like NVIDIA drivers, the VDA, what have you, the standard stuff, all the various apps, and I can go on and on and on with this that I've included. I've got as containers, and they're not VHDs that are being bolted on, they're being streamed in. It has a proprietary system of what they call an SVM. That it sits in a sandbox, persists across for you. It's pretty cool what they're doing on the backside for that virtualization piece for the applications. But these just sit there and they do their thing within the desktop, right? So I'm going to start exiting out some of these as we go. And then what I'm going to show as well is I want to show real quick and unsubscribe. So I've got a couple things here that I want to show just real fast. So this here, just a quick one for me to basically take these off of the image. As you see, they're gone, right? They're out of the start menu. It takes any bit of it. Nothing's ever, you can't see it from like program files, all that stuff standpoint, but it does have merge and isolation capabilities. So I can do full isolation on some parts of it. I can do merge on others, but as you can see, all of those are gone. So then I'm back to just what my base image was, which is essentially nothing but Office. And even now, like I said, this can be containerized. So that's kind of cool as far as that goes. And then, I'll do a full log out. Logs me out. Like, again, we have WEM kicking off our like resubscribe commands and whatnot from that standpoint. So it's as easy as going and doing a refresh here just to show off, how I can throw those back in there. Kudos to Ellie for our demo center.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ellie. That's pretty awesome.
It processes it as an external task. If you're familiar with WEM, there's a lot of stuff that WEM can do. WEM does this as an external task where I just have a little batch file. It goes through and does what I need it to do in this, and then boom, they're right back, right? So in this standpoint, I threw them all back on there. I'm republished back to what I needed in my image. I've kept everything clean. These could be super old, new, got compatibility, SLAs going forward, doesn't matter, right? Going over to AVD real quick. I'm gonna launch that one. I'm gonna go full screen, I think. All right, it's prompting me from the login. Just give me a second. I do not have MFA on these test accounts.
You logging into the Azure desktop?
Yeah, I'm gonna log into
cool.
the Azure desktop.
Time flies, man. We only got 8 minutes left. How'd that happen?
Well, maybe I won't. All right, so yeah.
Anyways. Well, I mean, it's good to show, I guess. Just it takes 2 seconds just to log in, just to kind of show it. It's streamlined. Because we're gonna show just log in real quick. Because on the AVD side, so Citrix offers what's called an AVD optimization pack now. And so essentially, if you are an AVD customer, you can, for a small fee, I think it's like a few bucks a user or whatever it is, you can get it right through the Azure marketplace. You can actually run Citrix WEM native on AVD, right? Just requires a cloud connector out there in that region. And now you can have the same management policies across the board from Citrix to AVD. And so that's what he was basically just going to show, is logging into that desktop, seeing the turbo apps as well as the experience kind of coming together, with the WEM piece, which is kind of neat. Yeah. In our demo environment, we use Nerdio from a management perspective. So we had everything kind of provisioned with Nerdio. And we do that for a lot of our enterprise customers. Just kind of
essentially just to show the uniform capability of AVD over to Workspace. Boom, boom. I'm gonna have the same stuff over in the AVD side of things. The same turbo apps. I'm not going to go through all that, but it's actually essentially I could do the exact same thing on this one that I could do on the previous one, is what I want to show. So the experience is the same. I can do the same things, right? So it's pretty cool. From that sense. So that's the native login. So I'll stop my share.
All right. So you can, there's some questions coming in. If you want to just queue them up.
I haven't been looking at it because I got the presenter view here.
No, that's all good. We can answer them in a second. But Yeah, so basically what I'm showing here is this is just our demo environment's kind of self-contained, so I have to kind of double hop to it. So I'm inside of a Citrix desktop right now. So my actual FIDO2 key is, my UB key is connected to this desktop, which I'm just showing that here. If you click on smart cards with HDX monitor, you can see the UB key. That's connecting through the custom virtual channel that's there, optimized virtual channels. You can see it pass through to the session. So the first thing I'm going to show is coming in and bringing it all together, right? Logging into that unified experience. So if I go to liquid, .choicedev.hq. That's the Liquid interface. It's set up with Azure AD, so it's going to forward me off to Azure AD. We have an enterprise app stood up there, and I'll log in with James Reese. Dude's badass, man. So you can see right away it pops up and it says, "Hey, you know, you got a FIDO2 key. You can see it. Citrix Systems. Pop your key in, right? Something you know, something you have. Hopefully, I don't forget my PIN." It wants me to touch the key. You can't see it, but I'm moving these two fingers over to my left to touch the key on the side.
Yes, he's touching the
Ever
key.
so gracefully, the key. Yeah. So you can see it logs in successfully, single sign-on, which is great, and that's what we want. And you can see what we have here. You know, it's just demo environments. Not like 1,000 apps to show. It just, you know, stood up, but you can see, you know, obviously custom branding as an end user. You come in here, you can see that from an aggregation perspective. You can see we have the AVD apps. So we have the general desktop Ozsaw there. As well as some local apps like Calculators, 7-Zip, Putty, et cetera. And then we have the SEAL Team 7 desktop, which is from Citrix. From a catalog perspective, this is what's really neat is there's a whole self-service platform that's a part of this. So basically, you know, being able to come in and any single app can be a self-service in a portal. So in this case, I can do a request for AVD PowerPoint. I can come in on the back end of the portal here and actually go to catalogs and go pending approvals. Approvals, and you'll see there's now James Reese came in for a pending approval for AVD PowerPoint. I can go ahead and just approve that user real quick. And then we can go back to my catalog and you'll see here on the workspace, AVD PowerPoint's position. So the whole self-service functionality that we always ask for is already built in with a whole you know, workflow around that. So from a launching perspective, you can see me launch the Citrix desktop here. So today, this is in private mode, so it's just prompting me or whatever. But but today, essentially, that was all single sign-on through SAML, and it's going to go ahead and launch the SEAL Team 7 desktop. So today, it requires you know, storefront integration to do that aggregation with DaaS. They're already working with the APIs and everything on the workspace side. It's actually a feature waiting for from a Citrix perspective. But it's just, but now this gives me that kind of native integration. You can see I logged directly in with federated authentication services, single sign-on into the same desktop that Oz was in as James Reach, which is pretty awesome. So we'll just minimize that. You can see the demo center WEM piece pops up and we're shaking and baking, right? So popping back over here on the AVD side, you can see me launch up. I didn't put the native client on here. So it's just launching just because again, it's just to show that I'm aggregating and launching these sessions, but you can see I can launch AVD from the same piece here, and we'll get that tech preview enabled so we can single sign on and don't have to add our credentials again. You can see me logging into Azure Virtual Desktop over here, which is kicking up. You can see, you know, WEM basically getting going over there. That's all ready to go. And then basically just to show you the back end for a second. So again, these are all aggregated as a single point. Each of these icons could have specific context properties associated with them. We go ahead and look at the back end on the management side. Click. Oh, hold on a second. Got a little bit of a lag going on here. There we go. It's my Wi-Fi. All right. So you can see here on the management side, this is kind of what it looks like. There's a whole slew of properties that we can't touch on today. This hopefully pique your interest and we'll get additional conversations going, but there's this concept of connectors basically. So you basically go in from an automation perspective to these connectors. And on the connector side of things, you basically come in and you can see we have these new connectors. So we have a storefront connector, an AVD connector. It brings these things as packages. So they automatically connect, aggregate, bring them in. We can have, preface those packages with different things like this, so I know what they are. And then in those packages themselves, you can actually create a whole slew of context properties, that you're able to do. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to dive into that like I wanted to there, but just know that we have the ability to do additional contextual awareness. By editing that specific application, we can basically, say, if they're in a certain location, go ahead, you can create these a ton of actions, right? This is where the UEM piece comes in, right? If you want to launch an app, for instance, you can say, go ahead and set up a map drive, set up the printer and do all those things prior to launching the app. So that's all baked in. And again, the main thing here to kind of wrap up is it's all brought in under under a single user interface. And on the branding side, what I just showed here, it's just super slow, my connection, but you could just see, you can come in here. This last thing here is basically on personalization. This entire piece can be 100% customized as that end user. So that's kind of the main thing I wanted to show. Again, bringing it all together. I wish I had a little bit more time, but we can do a second follow-up on that. I guess, Oz, just to, I know we have some questions here. I guess where are we at time-wise? We right on the button. We got a minute or two.
Couple more minutes so we can answer your questions. Shane, you can show the last, since you had it, if you want to show.
Yeah, I'll show the last slide and just cover kind of our workshop, and then we'll hit the questions real quick while that's kind of up.
Yeah,
you got it.
So that was really pulling it all together, right? From an aggregation standpoint and seeing some of the things in action. Again, real quick, because it is quick, right, of what we're doing. But just to reinforce what we just got done discussing and how that can work for you. So some of the questions I was just looking at regarding, in the Zoom, why not some other app layering? Citrix app layering, I think, was one of them. We do have some customers using app layering. App layering it took a long time to evolve from the Elm appliance standpoint to Silverlight. It just took them a long time to get rid of that to the new stuff. And then the whole OS has been needing to be part of the app layering process, which now I've been told they're going to have something coming to maybe get away from that from a Citrix standpoint. But the whole tying that all together, it's very difficult. So we haven't got a lot of traction. That was a hot item with Unidesk and app layering for quite some time. And there are some that are deep into it. But because of the OS layer needing to be part of it, it wasn't as fast from that standpoint. There's some other things like app attach, Flex app. Yeah, we're familiar with those on the app layering side of things. Again, Turbo just stood out for us. We've got a good working relationship with the team over there and the developers, and been really flexible and the value add there from what we're doing for this one piece of the puzzle, and also the network isolation capabilities and the SLA guarantee future proof for publish once, package it once, publish it anywhere, forever, is really nice there. So there's some real nuances there that I really liked about those guys and what they're doing. So for us, that was a big one. And then what was the other question here?
There was a question around just kind of updates and how they're handled. I'm assuming that's around, it could potentially be around on the liquid side as well as Turbo.
Yeah, we didn't, for the Turbo side, I'll answer that real quick. I wasn't able to get into the studio side, unfortunately, but they have the concept of a studio or a packager, that you pull it in there. You can pull in your previous one that you've done, you update it, and then you push it back out this SVM, right? You push it back out, you update it, you assign it to your quote unquote workspace. That workspace then is pulled in like you saw in the session as the new app, right? So essentially similar into the same type of thing with Citrix app layers, but again, the complexity behind that, the app layerings had versions. But then those you had to compose into an image. So it really didn't help you with image sprawl because you had to compose them into a different image for each department. But the versioning of the application itself, you can go and do that and easily piecemeal it in. As far as liquid, I'll let Shane answer that, but
essentially there's Liquid has an agent from an application. So if you're updating your apps through Turbo, then that's how it's handled. But if you're dealing with kind of local apps, essentially there's an agent where you can actually do, push out applications, push out updates and things like that, and then manage it through the release cycle. So that agent does have a slight overlap with what you could potentially do with LEM, but it's more focused around the application and launch that application than it is specifically around all the other things and locking down the environment and stuff you do with LEM. So we really do see kind of everything that we showed is kind of bringing together a holistic solution, which is pretty cool. Not something that where we see competing. None of these are competing. They're all kind of bolting the pieces together for sure.
Yeah. Last question was around, Microsoft. A good question before we wrap up here around Windows 10, 11 multi-session for non-Azure Stack HCI. That one, I don't know. That one they're pretty set on. I don't, we've had many discussions on this with our friend, Darren Gibson over there with Nutanix, for example, and that one's still out. The jury's still out on that.
The way I always look at it too is like they just stalled the market until they were ready, right? So they just said, we're going to do all this stuff. We're going to make all these licensing problems, the EDA license, all these things. So everyone just slows it down. they're getting all their stuff ready. And I'll say, okay, sure, you can go run it, but we're way ahead, but I don't think it'll happen anytime soon.
No.
I think they want to really build up their HCI platform. In my opinion, I don't see that as something that they're going to do anytime soon.
Yeah,
But
but on your second point, they did reverse course on the M365 support
Yes.
server 2022, but I do agree. This is probably the last time they're going to reverse course on that. I didn't even think it was going to come this time, to be honest.
Might have something to do with the lawsuit going on. I don't know. But
Was there a lawsuit? I didn't.
and Europe, and not here, but
yeah, I don't know. There's always a lawsuit somewhere.
yeah,
right?
something. Yeah, but
5 o'clock somewhere. So yeah, lawsuit. Yeah, so I think that was the end of the. Let me see if there's anything new.
yeah, I think that's the end of the questions. I mean, the main thing again, we wanted to kind of we wanted to basically kind of bring together these solutions, show you a little bit about what we're working on, and kind of that we're seeing in the market that we're starting to position to really help streamline the experience across these different hybrid environments. So yeah, if you're interested in kind of seeing some demos, maybe testing it out, just hearing more about it, definitely reach out. We're happy to kind of dig deeper, much deeper than what we were able to show here.
Yeah, Matt was asking about our tour dates for probably 2023. So Ellie will be having those. We usually talk about those at the beginning of the year. So we'll get to those tour dates. We're gonna start putting us on the road, right?
That's right, man. I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate everyone joining.
Yeah. Danny, any final comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, thanks. Awesome job, guys. And thanks everyone for joining. Again, just a reminder, we do have a survey that we'd be very grateful if you would, it'll pop as soon as we close this, but it'll also show via email as well. But we would love your feedback just on anything learned, anything we can improve upon. If there's anything you'd like, to learn more about from the great information that was shared today. So again, awesome job. And thank you all for joining us. We're very grateful and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Thank you. Take care.